Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers profanity, singing, and disorderly conduct, and is brought to us by This Is Butter's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the interaction, I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this episode, Kamikoto. Kamikoto makes durable and razor-sharp kitchen knives using steels sourced directly from Japan and traditional Japanese metalworking techniques. Kamikoto taps into more than 800 years of traditional techniques from Honshu, Japan to create distinctively sharp single-bevel knives. Each Kamikoto knife goes through a rigorous 19-step process that takes several years from start to finish to complete, and all of their knives are individually inspected. Kamikoto's expert bladesmiths cut and shape raw Japanese steel into hardy blades, polishing and sharpening them to an excruciatingly fine edge. Don't take my word for it. Kamikoto is used by Michelin-starred chefs all over the world. A set of Kamikoto knives makes preparing food one of the most fun parts of the cooking experience, and is exactly what I needed to take my cooking to the next level. Each knife has a subtle but smooth satin finish, and each set comes in a beautiful heavy-duty ash wood box. Kamikoto is so confident about their knives that they offer a lifetime guarantee on their knives. Right now, Kamikoto has a huge Black Friday sale going on, and they're offering members of the ATA community an extra $50 off of any purchase when you use code AUDITTHEAUDIT, or click on the link in the description below. A set of Kamikoto kitchen knives would make a great gift this holiday season, so click on that link before it's too late. Thanks again to Kamikoto for sponsoring this episode. On September 13th, 2021, officers from the Hephzibah Police Department were standing outside a house in Hephzibah, Georgia, discussing an unrelated matter with the homeowner. While the officers were conducting their investigation, local resident Christopher Jefferson walked down the sidewalk in front of the house, singing loudly to the Gucci Mane song First Day Out the Feds, which includes 2 profanities and 2 racial epithets. According to body camera footage from Police Chief Matthew Mercer, Officer Brian Tucker then approached Mr. Jefferson to confront him about his singing.
You got to bring it down. You got to bring it down. You got solid profanity out your mouth walking down the road here. I ain't trying to be disrespectful, nothing like that. But you don't worry about nobody. What you mean? Don't be cussing walking down the road. Don't nobody care about nobody. Peace. It's a free country. You know what I mean? Come on. But you ain't gonna disturb everybody. You understand that? Come on with that. Come on. You keep on walking and you do it quietly. You understand that? I'm getting tired of y'all harassing me, bro. I ain't harassing you, but you ain't gonna be walking down the road. So why you raising your voice at me? Everybody else hears you. So why you raising your voice at me? Tell you what, you got about 5 seconds. Come on, man. Don't let me catch you walking down the road. May I ask what your name is, sir? My name is Tucker. 998. Write it down. Oh, yeah. Y'all take a picture of it, please. Sure can. Come on, sir. Come on, please. Please, sir. He's got 5 seconds. That's good. Get your name so I can make a report. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking. I'm asking for your name. I'm asking you for your name. I'm about to ask for your name now. Come on, man. You can open my phone so you can call my wife's phone. Come on, man. I ain't did nothing to nobody. I'm asking you your name.
Officer Tucker tells Mr. Jefferson that he cannot walk down the street while shouting profanities, and places him into handcuffs after Mr. Jefferson asks him if he can take a photo of him to file a complaint. As we've discussed many times on ATA, profanity is generally considered free speech that is protected by the First Amendment. However, the use of profanity, like all free speech, is subject to reasonable and content-neutral time, place, and manner restrictions by the government, such as limits on the noise level of speech or the time at which such speech can occur. When the government restricts speech in this way, the limitations must apply without regard to the content of the speech, and cannot be used as a backhanded way of silencing unpopular opinions or certain viewpoints. For example, in the 1948 case of Saya versus New York, the Supreme Court invalidated a local ordinance that required individuals to obtain a permit from the chief of police to use a loudspeaker or amplifier. Because the ordinance did not include any standards limiting the chief's discretion in approving or denying permits, the court concluded that the ordinance violated the First Amendment right of free speech. In making its decision, the court reasoned that when a city allows a government official to ban loudspeakers with uncontrolled discretion, quote, it sanctions a device for suppression of free communication of ideas. In this case, a permit is denied because some persons were said to have found the sound annoying. In the next one, a permit may be denied because some people find the ideas annoying. Annoyance at ideas can be cloaked in annoyance at sound. Applying this standard, it is possible that the volume of Mr. Jefferson's speech was loud enough to violate a local noise ordinance and justify his detention by Officer Tucker. But any arrest or conviction would need to be based on the volume of Mr. Jefferson's speech, not its content.
Come on, man. The cigarettes and lighter. All right, that's it. Come on, man. Ain't you grabbing me around my throat? Really? Really? Excuse me, sir. Can you grab my phone and call my wife for me, please?
Get his ID, let's... You got your ID on you?
No, I ain't got no ID. That's why I'm telling y'all to call my wife. She got everything.
Actually, I think I have his information from a call earlier.
From last time, you came to walk me with my little boy. Man, the police got me in handcuffs. They harassing me again, man. Yeah, and this man grabbed me by my throat and threw me to the ground while I'm in handcuffs. What's this?
That's him.
Man, they talking about I'm disturbing the peace because I'm saying, did you just
walking down the road listening to his music?
did you just pick me up off the ground any kind of way? And I almost fell on my face.
Is that what this is?
Ma'am,
He's disturbing the peace because he's walking down the road with headphones in his ears.
he's walking down the road with headphones in his ears and he's cursing loudly.
Listening to music because he's repeating song lyrics.
Okay.
So he's being detained for what?
Ms. Jefferson claims that Mr. Jefferson was actually singing as he walked down the street, and that he did not intend to disturb anyone with the profanities that he allegedly shouted. Although the Hephzibah city ordinances are not available online, a local news story indicated that Section 13-124B of the city code states that, quote, "It is unlawful for any person or persons to sing on the public streets or sidewalks between the hours of 7 a.m. and 12 midnight. Unless the ordinance contains additional qualifications on the volume of the singing or some other reasonable time, place, or manner restrictions, a court would almost certainly find this ordinance to be unconstitutionally broad. Singing, like other types of musical performance and artistic expression, is protected by the First Amendment. In the 1984 case of Cinevision Corporation versus City of Burbank, the Ninth Circuit explained that, quote, "The Supreme Court has consistently held that expression beyond that of pure speech is protected by the First Amendment. Entertainment, as well as political and ideological speech, is protected. Motion pictures, programs broadcast by radio and television, and live entertainment, such as musical and dramatic works, fall within the First Amendment guarantee." The court went on to hold that, quote, "Music is a form of expression that is protected by the First Amendment, and that if a city council were to pass an ordinance forbidding the playing of rock music, quote, they would be infringing a First Amendment right, even if the music had no political message, even if it had no words, and the defendants would have to produce a strong justification for repressing a form of speech." In fact, as the Supreme Court held in the 1989 case of Ward versus Rock Against Racism, that in order for a restriction on speech to be constitutionally valid, it must be, quote, "narrowly tailored to serve a significant governmental interest." Considering this requirement, it is challenging to imagine a reasonable justification for a blanket prohibition on daytime singing, let alone a significant government interest that would outweigh an individual's First Amendment right to express themselves in the quintessential public forums of the streets and sidewalks.
Because he was in public cursing loudly.
So you're arresting him for being in public and cursing?
Right now, he's not under arrest. He's
so
being
why is
detained.
he being in handcuffs taken to a car?
It's called being detained.
Don't worry about it, baby. I'm calling my mom. We're getting an attorney for harassment. Don't worry about it. I'm getting all they need. What's your name?
Chief Mercer.
Thank you. What's your name, sir? Davidson? Excuse me, what's your name, please? Why does he have to put his legs over in the car if you're not arresting him?
If you don't be quiet, you gonna be don't say nothing, boy.
No, I won't be. Because I'm asking questions about why he's being detected.
Don't say nothing, boy. Just stay quiet, boy. Don't say nothing.
No, I know my rights.
Just be quiet, boy.
I can ask questions. Don't worry about it, baby. I got it all on video. Don't worry about it.
What is this?
That's the background check. Or not the background check. That's the while running.
Does he have any
No, he
warrants
does
or
not.
anything? Guess we'll talk over here.
You finished with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to clear up with that.
Okay.
988 dispatch. We'll be in service with the citation. Alright, come over here and we'll figure out what we want to do. If nothing else, we can get him on a disorderly conduct. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's pretty thin. You know, I mean, you're talking freedom of speech.
What do you mean? Oh.
So the fact that he wouldn't move on would be a disorderly. So,
Chief Mercer tells Officer Tucker that he cannot arrest Mr. Jefferson for cursing loudly because that would be a violation of his First Amendment rights, but then informs Officer Tucker that he can write Mr. Jefferson a citation for disorderly conduct because he didn't move on after being ordered to do so. However, it appears from the footage that Mr. Jefferson was willing to leave the scene once he received Officer Tucker's information so that he could file a complaint. Regardless of whether or not Mr. Jefferson refused to leave, neither Georgia's disorderly conduct statute nor the Hephzibah disorderly conduct ordinance would allow for a citation in this situation. Section 16-11-39 of the Georgia Code states that an individual commits disorderly conduct when they act, quote, in a violent or tumultuous manner toward another person, use fighting words without provocation, or use obscene and vulgar or profane language to a child under the age of 14 years. Mr. Jefferson's conduct clearly did not fit in any of these categories. According to a photograph of paper records obtained by a local news agency, Section 13-101 of the Hephzibah City Ordinances details a long list of behaviors and activities that can constitute disorderly conduct, none of which remotely align with Mr. Jefferson's actions. Some examples of disorderly conduct contained in the ordinance include endangering the lawful pursuits of another by acts of violence, threats of violence, or abusive conduct, jostling or roughly crowding or pushing any person in a public place, assembling or congregating with others for unlawful purposes, and causing, provoking, or engaging in a fight, brawl, or other riotous conduct. Given the definitions of the offense under state and city law, it is unclear why Chief Mercer believed he could cite Mr. Jefferson for disorderly conduct, which is likely why the charge against him was later reduced.
Yeah, the problem is we trying to do an investigation,
and he's interfering with
this. Yes, walking up the street, singing loud. I've been let him go one time.
Right.
You know, and
from his headphones.
and
They
so
detained him and threw him to the ground. Now they got him
Be
back into the car. But he's walking down the road while black.
then he wanted to get loud.
And to music in his
Monica.
headphones.
Monica.
It's the third time they've done it to him.
What is this? Who else is this happening? Who else is arrested?
I'm not sure.
I got all their names. I'm getting it all on video. We're going to get an attorney. We're going to file harassment. And we're going to file a sexual assault as well. Nothing. I'm trying to see what they're doing because they're not telling me what he's being arrested for, but they got him back to the car.
I would say let's just write him a ticket, bring him to city court, disorderly, because he was interfering with the investigation. I got it on body cam.
They got him back in the car.
The officers eventually released Mr. Jefferson and issued him a citation for disorderly conduct and profanity under Section 13-101 of the city ordinances. This charge was later reduced to a violation of Hephzibah's noise control ordinance, and as of the date of writing this episode, Mr. Jefferson is awaiting a bench trial in the Hephzibah Municipal Court after his request for a jury trial was denied. A local news story reported that Chief Mercer believes there were no issues with the way his officers handled the situation and stated that no officers were under investigation. Chief Mercer also reported that, as of the date of the interview, Mr. Jefferson had not filed a formal complaint. Overall, the Hephzibah police officers get an F for arresting Mr. Jefferson as he attempted to gather Officer Tucker's information, displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of free speech, and for failing to employ any measure of de-escalation. Although it could be argued that Officer Tucker initiated Mr. Jefferson's detainment based on the volume of his speech rather than its content, this encounter essentially amounted to an individual being arrested because they were annoying a police officer. The questionable behavior exhibited by Officer Tucker and the other city officials did not end at the arrest. According to CBS 12's investigative team, they found that minutes before Mr. Jefferson's pre-trial hearing, the prosecuting attorney amended the charges, dropping them from disorderly conduct and profanity to a lesser charge of violating the city's noise control ordinance. This offered Hephzibah Municipal Judge Freddie Sanders the opportunity to deny Mr. Jefferson a trial before a jury, as he had requested, and prevent the case from escalating from a local municipal court to a state-level court, effectively robbing him of his right to a trial by jury. When Mr. Jefferson returns to municipal court, he will go before Judge Sanders once again, and if found guilty of violating the city's noise control ordinance, he could pay a fine of $380. Mr. Jefferson also still has the opportunity to bring civil charges against the officers, the department, or the city of Hephzibah, and he has yet to file a formal complaint to initiate any kind of internal investigation. This interaction highlights how quickly a failure to de-escalate can spiral into a violation of civilian rights, and it'll be interesting to see if any of the Hephzibah officers are held accountable for their actions. Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson get an A for urging one another to remain silent as much as possible, challenging the legitimacy of the stop without becoming violent or non-compliant, and for refusing to allow Officer Tucker's threats to discourage them from exercising their constitutional rights. Despite clearly feeling as though he was being unlawfully arrested, Mr. Jefferson remained calm and compliant throughout the encounter and managed to stay relatively quiet once he was placed into handcuffs. Mrs. Jefferson deserves recognition for having the awareness to begin recording immediately and for fearlessly interrogating the officers about their conduct and intentions. At one point, Officer Tucker threatens to arrest Mrs. Jefferson for questioning his arrest methods, and she informs him that she is well within her rights to ask questions. Mrs. Jefferson's strong presence and quick thinking dramatically impacted the outcome of this encounter, and I commend her for remaining vigilant and composed throughout the interaction. Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson handled this encounter well together, and as mentioned before, it will be interesting to see if they take any legal action once the criminal case is resolved. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for even more police interaction content.